The battle for dominance in the smartphone world is one that's been raging for a few years. And while a lot has been made of the hardware developments, what of the power struggle taking place between the likes of Apple, Android, Windows Phone and BlackBerry? Here's our rundown of the 4 top mobile platforms and how they fare in the mobile melee.
Well, there's a big change in iOS 7 compared to iOS 6. In fact, it's the biggest overhaul to the operating system since its conception in 2007. And for a lot of hardcore Apple fans, they're up in arms about it. They just don't like their lurid colours, the new features, the new design. But at the end of the day, it's still the same Apple experience under the hood. And in a few months' time, they'll forget all about iOS 6 and they'll be singing the praises of iOS 7.
It's very much a design upgrade, so you've got the flattening of the apps, but also you've got things like Control Center, which really give a pervasive action that you can really control the device from anywhere in the phone, which makes a real big difference when you're fighting something like Android, which has already given this kind of functionality for years.
One of the big issues people have with iOS is its lockdown nature. Apple likes to keep control of everything on its systems, from the apps it has in its App Store to even the keyboard you use to type on. Now, if it wants to tempt people away from Android, maybe it needs to open up a little. Even having the ability to change the keyboard to a third-party offering may convince people to make the jump to iOS.
Well, if you look at the evolution of Android, from version 1 to version 4.2, it's leaps and bounds different. I mean, the whole layout is different. You basically just got the same thing in terms of icons and widgets, and that's it. On top of that, everything is different. The font is redesigned, the layout is much more improved, it's very fast, it's very slick.
The big thing which makes Android stand out is its openness. Apple is very locked down, and in a way Windows Phone and BlackBerry also are. It's the most open of the major platforms, and that really attracts people to it as they can really make it a personal experience.
So you can have stock Android, and obviously a lot of consumers like that. Then you can have different options that help you define your own smartphone brand. So Samsung has done it very well with TouchWiz, HTC Sense has gone through different iterations, has now come out looking really strong, and more smartphone manufacturers are getting in the game simply because they can put their own stamp on a very popular operating system.
In terms of what's next for Android, it's not overly clear at the moment. We may see Android 4.3 or we may jump straight to Keyline Pi. If it's 4.3 next, then you don't really need to worry too much. There's only going to be minor upgrades there. But if we go to Keyline Pi, that's one to watch, as we're probably going to get a much bigger change. Windows Phone 8 is not one that you should forget really. Android and iOS may be stealing the headlines, but it doesn't mean that Microsoft has done a bad thing with its offering.
Windows Phone is an interesting operating system. It's been around for quite a few years now, and yet it's still not really got the traction that Microsoft probably would have hoped for in the market. It's definitely growing, and it's definitely the third best ecosystem on the market at the moment, simply because it's actually quite decent. The live tiles are still a very good feature, having this constant updating feed of information that doesn't get too obtrusive on your day-to-day smartphone use. It's the hardware that needs to come next. The Nokia Lumia 925 was a great iteration, but didn't take things much further on from the Nokia Lumia 920 we saw in September last year. So really, we need to see phones that compete with the Galaxy S4s, the HTC Ones. We want to see full HD screens, we want to see quad-core processors. Do consumers need them? Not really, but they want them. Marketing materials have told them this is the great thing you should have. If they see their friend with an Android phone that's just more powerful and often a bit cheaper, they might think, well, why is my Windows Phone this? I know I can do all these things, but I want it to be as powerful and to run as quickly and as smoothly. And that's what Windows Phone needs. It needs the great hardware, and it needs it at a price that people can afford.
BlackBerry's an interesting one. BlackBerry 10 was launched earlier this year after many people had written off the company altogether, and it's hoping it can revive its fortune with its new operating system.
The BlackBerry 10 OS isn't without its own standout features. Obviously Peak is quite exciting, the fact that you can always get back to your messaging centre from anywhere within the phone, and there are a lot of people that really like that. You've also got the work-life balance section, which means that you can actually bring a decent device to your work and say, look, I want to use this day to day, and some firms wouldn't allow that with an Android and iOS device. That can be possible with the BlackBerry 10. Those are two really good aspects of it, but they're not enough to say, you know what, I'm going to buy a BlackBerry over all the other phones that are on the market.
That's not to say it's a bad platform. It's got a bit of a way to go, but there's solid foundations there. The question is, will people choose it over the other offerings on the market?
It needs to get a stunning web browser, or it needs to make a camera operating system that is just so good that everyone wants to get to it straight away. Or just make it so the home screens aren't just so bland. I mean, they are just, again, rows and rows of icons. That's the problem. We're just seeing the same thing over and over again from different manufacturers. And while the likes of Nokia with Windows Phone are really starting to innovate in certain areas, we need more from BlackBerry. And while it's not in trouble yet, it's definitely getting close to intensive care if it doesn't start selling soon.